was trying to get on. She had a little technical difficulty, so please watch for her to come online and
Okay.
mark her present when she does. Thank
Ex
you.
officio member Rosenberg.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you. We're now on agenda item number 3, which is our public comment period. Is there any general public comment for our CAMPO today? No? Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item number 4, which is approval of our minutes of April 12th, 2023. Do I have any corrections, updates, changes, or a motion, please?
Move approval of the minutes from the April 12th meeting.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Thank you. Mr. Henderson was the second. We're now on agenda item 5A, which if everyone would like to join me, I like to do these down below and let people try and take pictures and make a big deal out of them, or they're no fun, right? So come on, let's go celebrate this. I should have Mr. Henderson join me here. It was his idea. Yeah, I'll put you on the hot seat. It was your idea. With us today, we have Justin McDonald. Hello, thank you so much for joining us. This is a pleasure. It was his idea. So we thought today it would be good for CAMPO to do an actual proclamation. So whereas motorcycle riding is a popular form of recreation and transportation for thousands of people across the state and the nation. Whereas the safe operation of a motorcycle requires the use of special skills developed through a combination of training and experience, the use of good judgment, and a thorough knowledge of traffic laws and licensing requirements. And whereas the safety consideration of motorcycling should be of great concern to motorcyclists as well as all other motor vehicle operators. And whereas it is especially important that citizens of our state be aware of motorcycles on the streets and highways and recognize the importance of motorcyclist safety. Whereas research shows that motorcyclists are significantly overrepresented in traffic crashes and fatalities each year. We got to change that. In fact, in 2020, per vehicle mile traveled, motorcyclists were about 28 times more likely than a passenger vehicle occupant to die in a motor vehicle crash and were 4 times more likely to be injured. Whereas all motorcycle organizations, clubs, dealerships, groups, enthusiasts, and highway safety officials in our state should join with the Nevada Department of Public Safety in actively promoting safe operation, increased rider training, improved licensing efforts, and an increase in both rider and motorist awareness. Whereas the Nevada Department of Public Safety created the Nevada Rider Motorcyclist Safety Program in 1991 to encourage all motor vehicle operators to be especially cautious and look out for these smaller vehicles during the seasonal return of motorcyclists to Nevada streets and highways. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, this is different for me to say, Chair of the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as Motorcycle Safety and Awareness Month in the CAMPO region. I probably should have done it as a mayor one too, because I just think it's so vitally important that safety on our roadways is always something to be aware of, and that we often forget motorcycles in our discussion. So I really appreciate Wes last month saying let's do this as CAMPO, because I think it's so vitally important. It was a great idea. And then, do you want to say anything? A few words, Justin? Please. Yes, we do. It's important.
Well, first off, thank you, CAMPO. Thank you, Wes, for bringing this, and thank you, Mayor. Just a few words. How do we improve this? Like you asked the question. So how do we change the culture? I moved here recently from out of state, and I noticed that a lot of traffic is very focused on getting someplace the fastest they can go. So how can we all affect that change? How can we look out for others, our fellow people? How can we realize that, hey, I know this person in the next car, like, let's cooperate. So if we can start to have a culture change in not only looking out for motorcyclists, but all vulnerable road users, all people driving, that's how we're going to, yes, that's how we can start to affect change. So if you can help me figure that one out, I'd really appreciate it.
Because you need your stats to go down.
Yes.
Good idea. I'm thinking that's how it works, right? That's how it works. Do we have anyone that just get in a little closer and let's have a picture? I think it's so vitally important that we work towards these common goals. Closer, a little closer. We can do this time, Deb. Thank you all, and again, so very much for your role and your help in achieving that safety. Thank you. Thank you, Les. Back. Okay. Sorry, but now after reading, I need a Coke. Okay. We're now on agenda item, make sure there's nothing at the bottom of the page. 6A, discussion and possible action regarding the formal amendment to 2302 to the Carson area Metropolitan Planning or CAMPO, federal fiscal year 2023 through 2026 transportation improvement program to add a new project and to make revisions to the scope, limits, and funding across multiple projects. Ms. Norman, take us through this, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kelly Norman, Transportation Planner, for the record. The formal amendment to the federal fiscal year 2023 through 2026 Transportation Improvement Program includes adding a document history that records the changes within each version of the TIP, adding the Curry Street project, closing out the Edmonds multi-use path project, and updating project limit costs and scopes for other projects listed within the document history and the staff report. There was a 14-day public comment period from April 22nd through May 6th. No public comments have been received. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have about the TIP.
Does any member have a question? Nobody has a question on this one? I would just like to make a comment because I think some of it fiscally constrained or not constrained, but also form constrained or not form constrained. So on packet page 51, on the project, our Curry Street project out in fiscal year 27, we have listed congressionally designated spending of 2.6 million. And I had asked staff to change that to requested or pending because I don't want anyone in the public to believe that we've already received that as an actual designation. We did indeed submit it, but we're not through all the wheels of the national group. So I just on the record, in case the public is ever looking at these documents, because I don't have a way to, or Kelly doesn't have a way to drop down and change the word depending or requested. Again, I just want to put on the record that we don't have it yet, but maybe we can continue to put a little pressure and get a little more help congressionally to get that. We did make it through Congressman Amade's office, just to give you an FYI on that. But does anybody else have anything on the tip? Is there any public comment for this? No? Okay, I'll accept a motion then. Do you want to make it? Ms. Maloney?
I move to formally amend CAMPO's federal fiscal year 2023 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Program as presented.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second by Mr. Novak. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. The record reflect that was unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move to agenda item 6B, which is discussion and possible action regarding the cooperative agreement with NDOT and CAMPO to receive $694,040.75. Can't forget the pennies. In consolidated planning grant for fiscal year '24 to be expended according to our Unified Planning Work Program and subject to the maximum 5% local match, estimated at $36,528.46, and to authorize the transportation manager to sign the agreement and future amendments that do not exceed 10%. We don't have her yet. So, Mr. Martinovich, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. Wanted to take you through briefly on this item. This item is to fund, as you mentioned, CAMPO's Unified Planning Work Program for fiscal year '24. This is very similar to an item that we do every year to fund CAMPO's next federal fiscal year, or actually state and city fiscal year, using federal fiscal year dollars for the Unified Planning Work Program. The amount there listed, $694,000, is subject to a maximum 5% local match of $36,528, as was mentioned. And this would be a one-year agreement for a term of July 1st through June 30th of 2024. We are working with NDOT and the other MPOs to establish sort of a longer-term agreement so that we don't necessarily have to come back every year. And we're continuing to coordinate on that formula and the terms of that agreement. And hopefully by this time next year, we'll have that finalized. So continuing to work and make progress on that. Otherwise, happy to answer any questions.
Member have a question? No? Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion. Everybody's jumping right. Mr. Henderson, you can
Thank
do
you.
it.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the agreement as presented and to authorize the transportation manager to sign the agreement as well as future amendments that extend the time for performances or approve funding changes not to exceed 10% of the present agreement amount.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Dodson. I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, we're now on agenda item 6C, discussion and possible action regarding a proposed amendment to CAMPO's Unified Planning Work Program for fiscal year '23 and '24, which includes an amended budget to carry forward unused '23 funds to '24 and a $298,075 budget increase for FY '24 to reflect available federal consolidated planning grant funds and other federal and local funds and various revisions to our work elements. Ms. Norman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kelly Norman, Transportation Planner. So CAMPO staff is presenting an amendment to the fiscal year 2023 to 2024 Unified Planning Work Program. And again, to summarize, the Unified Planning Work Program is Carson area MPO's two-year description of planning activities and budget to complete these required tasks. This amendment is needed to carry forward unused fiscal year 2023 funds and to incorporate additional funds available in fiscal year 2024. CAMPO staff updated the UPWP milestones and completion dates for tasks, for all tasks. And there was an open public participation period lasting from April 8th through May 6th. In addition, CAMPO submitted a draft UPWP to NDOT, FHWA, and the FTA for comments, and no comments have been received. The UPWP is subject to a maximum 5% local match. CAMPO's three-member agencies, Carson City, Lyon County, and Douglas County, will be invoiced after the beginning of the new fiscal year for the required local match, as is typical each year. Figure 1.0 in the staff report illustrates the required match for the member agencies on packet page 72. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any question the board may have.
Does any member have a question? Ms. Maloney?
Just drawing an analogy. Imagine you have a big bowl of soup and someone is scooping in soup with a giant ladle that's not quite full. You're not quite sure the amount, and the soup is leaking out the bottom. And you've been asked to make a soup sandwich that is this. That's what staff are trying to do when they put these together with this item and the one before.
Constant.
And it's a lot of work behind the scenes, both for our staff and for NDOT, and so just really well done. Good job.
Thank you. Any other comment? Please let the record reflect that Ms. Schutte has joined the online version. Is there any public comment on this item? Don't see any. Ready for a motion?
I will-
Mr. Novak, thank you.
Okay. I move to approve amendment number 1 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, but
I'll let Mr. Erb as the second
Okay,
today.
that's fine.
We got everyone involved. This is a good meeting. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Ms. Schutte, I'm going to let the record reflect you were a yes unless you shout out. Okay, thank you. We're now on to agenda item 7A, our transportation manager's report. Mr. Martinovich?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of items I wanted to highlight. Kelly mentioned a number of public participation periods. I think we had a tip at 15, a UPWP at 30. Tomorrow is our public participation plan, which is a 45-day required public comment period. So we'll be initiating and releasing that public participation plan draft beginning tomorrow for a 45-day public comment period. We'll bring forward that draft plan with all the public comments that we would receive at a July CAMPO board meeting. So I wanted to put that out there. Our survey is still open. I think we've received close to 80 surveys about to 76 surveys so far. We hope to get over 100. We do have a large event on May 20th where we're hoping to get some definite public participation for our survey. So I wanted to note that. Following approval of the TIP today, as well as the Unified Planning Work Program, those will be submitted formally to NDOT, FTA, and the FHWA for their approval. So I wanted to just note that, the task of approving it here is the first step, then we submit that to the board, or from the board to those agencies for their review and approval as well. I did want to note, I think Commissioner Novak's mentioned in the past, next week is the Nevada Transportation Conference. A number of us are speaking and giving presentations at that, so I just wanted to put that on the record. If anyone's interested in going, definitely sign up. It'll be a good conference. I wanted to also mention coordination with Lyon and Douglas County. CAMPO staff want to continue to reach out to them. We have a pavement management survey we want to continue to coordinate with. We want to reach out to Commissioner Henderson and talk about potential transit opportunities or needs in your area so that CAMPO may be able to help in those areas. So we have things on our radar and definitely want to continue the dialogue with both of those counties as well as Carson City. So wanted to note that. And our participation with NDOT is always ongoing, so appreciate Sandra continuing to be here. With that, I'm happy to take questions.
Does any member have any questions? Okay, how about just any board members or anything for future agenda items or comments, anything?
Yeah. I could
Mr.
mention
Novak.
a couple of things. I did make it to the International Trails Summit up in Sparks for a couple hours.
Good.
And I think there was 900 people there. So
And
it was a
21 countries or something, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It was a big deal, and I talked to some of my former workmates, and one of the things I picked up, we're still encouraging flexible funding for transit access, which means essentially you can use highway money for transit, but the other way around really doesn't exist. So that's one of the things I kind of dealt with when I was working, but it's like transit money's for transit, plus you can get highway money for transit, but you can't flex transit money back into highways for the most part, except for planning.
That would actually make sense to me. Okay, makes sense.
Yep.
Got it.
And then one of the other things I sent to Chris, saw the folks had prepared all the funding options for pedestrian and bicycle projects, and it's this ridiculous spreadsheet. It's complicated, but I'm glad folks are actually looking into it and see what opportunities we have. So that's all I've got.
Kelly is all over that spreadsheet.
Perfect. Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank staff for putting this proclamation together. I really appreciate it, and I have two comments on that. For those of you that ride motorcycles, please dress properly. I cringe every time I see a guy on a bike with sandals, shorts, and a t-shirt. No gloves. Dress properly.
No helmet.
No, well, kind of got to have that, but.
I know, but I
yeah,
still see him without him.
And also, for all you parents out there, teach your kids to count motorcycles when you go on trips, because that trains them to look for them. And when they become drivers, they already have that habit. So that's my 2 tips. So thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or thoughts? Okay, then we will move to our final public comment. Time for the. All right, with that, then we are adjourned as the CAMPO board and will reconvene as the RTC at 5. Thank you for a good meeting. That was fast and easy. Thanks for coming. to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Schudy,
Here.
Commissioner Dotson,
Here.
Commissioner Maloney,
Here.
Commissioner Novak. A quorum's present.
Thank you so much. Disclosure. Hold on. Okay, we are now on public comment. Do I have any opening public comment for the Regional Transportation Commission? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 4, which is approval of our minutes of April 12th, 2023. Do I have any changes, corrections, updates? Okay, I'll accept a motion for approval, please.
I'll move to approve the April 12th meeting minutes as presented.
Second, please.
I will second.
Motion by Mr. Novak and a second by motion by Mr. Dotson and a second by Mr. Novak. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. We're now on to agenda item 5A, discussion and possible action regarding a proposed pavement management plan for fiscal year 24 through 28. Brian, take us through this, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian Byrne, Transportation Engineer. This item is to approve an updated pavement management plan for 2024 through 2028. To back up, in 2018, a pavement management plan was established with the aim of creating a recurring 5-year plan for pavement management. While the core procedures and goals remain the same, the plan has undergone minor updates to reflect current data, our in-depth data analysis and prioritization process, and our scheduling for different pavement treatments. To provide context, the process and implementation schedule can be found on packet page 19. This schedule outlines timeframes for projects that encounter preservation treatment versus reconstruction treatment. You will notice that the efforts for reconstruction extend an extra calendar year due to the level of effort and design coordination. Furthermore, on packet page 20, there's an update on how projects are prioritized, with a more data-driven process that scores multiple categories for each potential project. This process provides a comprehensive overview of the project and its benefits to the community, aiding in the identification and selection of the recommended projects. If there's any questions, comments, or concerns, I'm happy to answer those.
Does any member have a question, comment? Ms. Maloney?
This document was kind of my baby when I was hired by City Manager Nick Morano. We talked about this before I was even hired, and it's funny to see plans, and I'm sure Greg knows as after you leave how they evolve, and the documents that you guys are doing, they just keep getting better. So again, really well done.
Thank you, and I just want to shout out to the staff of Kelly and Chris who really helped on the back end support this document with the data.
I think it's an excellent program, and you guys get to present it next week. So I think you're going to get some feedback from around the state.
Yes.
Thank you.
I really hope so, because I think it's something, I don't know, I think it's something that Supervisor Bonkowski and myself were super excited to champion the districts and the methodologies to not just pavement, but everything in Carson City, all of our fixed assets. And so this one really just continues to evolve and get better. And I just want to thank staff. Oftentimes as policymakers, we have the vision, and then you get the poor task going, wow, they want me to take that vision and put it into detail. Thanks a lot. But because I know it's a lot of work, but I think that we really have a product here to be proud of, and that it can withstand comments from the public, right? How do we make sure we're just making rational decisions and not either the person that just calls all the time complaining who believes their road is the worst, because I'm sure mine is, but really gives us good evidence as to why we're making the decisions. Obviously, we could always use more money to fix more roads, but just really want to put on the record of how proud I am that we can start from a vision and then how well staff implemented that vision. So thank you.
I've
Kudos.
got one additional comment on this. I think anything that we build new now is built to very good standards, but I think a lot of the roadway mileage you have in Carson City was never built to those standards. So you're playing catch up, and
We'll never
if
get
you
there.
were to build into standards, the prices would even go higher. But I think you're playing catch-up as best we can. Thank you.
True statement. No, nobody else? Do I have any public comment on this item? Okay. Who would like to make a motion? Ms. Maloney?
I move to approve the pavement management plan as presented.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. We're now on to agenda item 5B as in boy. Discussion and possible action regarding the 60% design plans and updated cost estimates for the East Fifth Street reconstruction project and different options for project funding and implementation. Brian, this one must be your favorite to take us through.
Yes.
Ours too. Okay.
Don't think the Bluetooth is connected. Oh,
I
it
had
did?
it.
It's good, okay. Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian Byrne, Transportation Engineer. Today, I'll be giving an update on the District 3 Fifth Street reconstruction project. No,
There you go.
okay, perfect. Oops. As a refresher, this project includes the expansion of the roundabout located on East Fifth Street and the Fairview Drive intersection, along with pavement preservation and reconstruction, water line replacement, and ADA upgrades between Fairview Drive and the Marsh Road. We have constructed the right turn lane at Carson River Road and completed a 60% design for the overall project. To begin, I wanted to remind you of the traffic impact study that was completed for the expansion of the Eagle Valley Middle School project. This study highlighted the level of service for the roundabout, which is the average delay experienced by vehicles at a controlled or uncontrolled intersection. As shown in the lower left corner of the slide, we can see the existing level of service has an overall rating of F, meaning certain movements in the roundabout are over capacity and creating longer delays. Please note, though, that this is occurring for only less than 1 hour of the day and only on school days. To help mitigate this level of service, I presented 3 design alternatives to you earlier this year for roundabout improvements. From that, we moved forward with designing alternative 1, which would propose 2 lanes in the north and southbound direction and right turn lanes in the east and westbound direction. This proposed concept could result in the operating level service shown in the bottom right corner with those improvements. Here we have some of the roundabout features highlighted from our 60% design. We have designed the 2 northbound and southbound legs with right turn lanes in the east and westbound direction. We have simplified the number of pedestrian crossings to enhance ped and bike safety. You can see that we needed to shift the center of the roundabout further to the west to allow for a larger inscribed circle, in which causes other impacts to the surrounding area. The roundabout has been designed to accommodate a WB 67, highlighted in the upper right-hand corner, along with school buses to maneuver in all directions in a single lane. As we continue further east, we will be enhancing these locations highlighted in the blue circles with ADA-compliant curb ramps and crossings. We will also be making pavement improvements with some reconstruction and preservation treatment. These improvements are from the roundabout to the end of 5th Street at Marsh Road. That leads us to the budget and schedule. Currently, we are working towards 100% design and show we are on schedule for completion towards the end of the summer. With that, we have updated our 60% cost estimate, which resulted in just under $6 million. Our current budget has only allocated just under $3.5 million. This has led staff to evaluate some options moving forward, given the large difference in funds. I'd also like to note that the available federal funds for this project are supposed to be obligated by 2023.
The federal funds,
Yes.
2023?
Yes,
Federal fiscal year or state?
federal.
Federal fiscal year 23?
So staff developed 3 options to consider moving forward. Option 1 would finalize the current design of alternative 1. Option 2 would reduce the scope and propose a westbound right turn lane only. And finally, option 3 considered a phasing approach, but that was deemed not feasible given the vertical and horizontal configurations restricting future phasing. So now I kind of wanted to jump into each individual option to give a little bit more detail. Option 1, as I previously mentioned, total of approximately just under $6 million. Our remaining budget is just over $3 million, leaving a deficit of $2.9 million. So moving forward with this alternative in this design, some of the pros are that it would overall increase the capacity. It would meet our design standards of level service of D or better. Some of the cons are obviously the cost and the challenging of constructability given its location with traffic control. If this option were to move forward, some potential funding sources to help fulfill that gap would be fiscal year 23 CAMPO STBG funds of $1.3 million, our fiscal 24 Regional Transportation Fund from District 1 projects of $800,000, and our fiscal 24 V&T Infrastructure Fund of $816,000. I'm going to jump over into option 2, which would be the westbound right turn lane. So this would be coming from Eagle Valley, heading west, and providing a right turn lane for northbound movement. This total for these improvements would be just over $2.5 million. With our remaining budget, we would have a surplus of approximately $477,000. So the pros of implementing this right turn lane, it would improve the queuing and capacity issue for the westbound traffic in the AM peak hour. Some of the cons are it still reflects overall level service of E. And please note that down in the right, I think it says overall level service of F. That's been corrected on this slide to show level service of E. So this right turn lane, as you can see, would significantly reduce the delay in the existing conditions to the future from an F to a C for just that westbound approach. If this option were selected, we would have a surplus of federal funds of $477,000 that would be reallocated to eligible projects such as Colorado Street, and that would also free up local funding. So the next step is kind of moving forward with one of these options or other recommendations. So option 1 would be to finalize the design and follow the original schedule. Or option 2, we would revise and finalize the design and follow the original schedule and seek additional funding to complete alternative 1, design and construction at a future date. So at this point, I'm definitely happy to open it up for conversation, discussion, and input.
Who wants to start? Go ahead.
I can start. I'm sure everybody's got opinions on
There,
it.
yeah, we all have those in life. Go, Mr. Novak.
I think it's a great idea and a great design, but $6 million is a little bit much compared to our other needs. So I think there's other development coming around. Lampa Ranch in various forms is filling in. You've got a fire station going in nearby over on Bud-Eye, and Prison Hill has some development coming or future projects as well. So at this point, I would say, try to find some additional funding sources, if anything. But, maybe we just hold off and wait because there's other good needs around the city that we could reallocate this money to. I don't think the federal funds will disappear this fiscal year. They're there till they're spent, so somebody will be able to spend them someplace.
Somebody else want to comment? Okay, so I'll give it I think we need a more robust discussion. So first and foremost, I feel we did a lot of public outreach when the school was being designed. And we had lots and lots of meeting with the community there that is subject to that school, and it was presented as part of the solution to having the expanded besides the right-hand turn lane pocket that is done. But it was really presented to those residents there that we were gonna protect them, because the issue is that hour, you can't even get an emergency vehicle through, because there's just no way. And so there's a little bit more to the story than just the level of service. Am I concerned about the dollar amount? The answer is yes, right? And so I think but I'm also committed to that when we tell the public we're gonna accomplish something or we're gonna do something, I feel pretty obligated to do that also. But, so then my discussion is the money that we've already paid for the design. If I change the design, how much money am I having to either redo or re-spend in the design?
Yeah, there would definitely be some additional funding to go towards the design. However, up until this point, everything has been pretty needed. We have still needed to move forward with our noise study analysis. We still needed to get to a 60% level to understand the vertical impacts and the horizontal to even understand that this is a challenge. Versus at 30%, it was still more two-dimensional, right? Where we think we can fit it in at this price. So yes, there will be some cost to reduce the scope and implement that design, but it's not going to be a significant amount towards what we've accomplished so far.
And then, can you go back to the slide of where you're looking to be able to backfill some funding? You had some options that were written down there.
Yes.
So if I look at that, are you telling me there's 1.3 million in STBG that has not been obligated currently? So we have a grant that has 1.3 million available? Is that what you're telling me?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm
Chris
just-
Martinovich, there is, CAMPO has not obligated, Carson City, CAMPO has obligated its 1.3 to Carson City to use on a project. Carson
don't
City
have it
has not
obligated on a
identified it
project.
on a specific project to date at this point.
Okay, so that funding is technically available. The District 1 project money, what you're indicating there is we would be making a shift in a decision of pavement management that we did district by, I just want everybody, I want us to understand what we're truly talking about and doing. And so I want to make sure it's not just my understanding, it's all of ours of what we're doing. So I'm not in support of taking the money away from District 1. Because again, now I'm competing one plan against the other. So I'm not extremely excited about that either, because I think that's a commitment that we made in the other direction, is that we're gonna rotate each year through a district to keep the entire community maybe not great with our level of service, but at least it's consistent. And when you look at the report in there, actually was kind of, right? You can tell where we've had grant money and been able to, put on the gas pedal somewhere, and you can see we are able to raise that district's level of service, or PCI overall,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And so I don't want to lose ground in District 1. The V&T Infrastructure Fund, that again is money that is available and has not been obligated, so I'm not taking it from another source. So if I'm correct in my analysis, is we're looking for where would I get $800,000 to complete this commitment? And so we have in ARPA funding, we as the Board of Supervisors level indicated we were gonna spend some to finish off the tennis courts. It's Centennial, because we haven't been able to figure out how to, again, not piecemealing things. And so I'm gonna start off with this overall conversation. I don't wanna piecemeal. I don't wanna do the alternate two. That to me doesn't make any sense. I'm not meeting our goals or our level of service, and why would I spend 2 million when I only want to touch this road once in 15 years or 20 years, right? And so that doesn't make any sense to me either. So potentially there's 400,000 in ARPA funding that could we could ask for? Because I know, just happened to be looking at something this morning, that I have undesignated around 400,000 sitting there. If there was nowhere else on any of our other projects that we were trying to eke out some money. So it's just a thought process that we could, as this group, say, instead of from District 1, we could ask for 400,000 from the undesignated ARPA dollars. And then depending on how that's going, if a couple of those come in less expensive or aren't going to expend, more of it might come through. So where else could we get 400,000? That would leave us if we took the undesignated from ARPA. And so I throw that out. One, do we want to stick with the plan? So that's our first discussion point. Or do you guys want to make a lesser alternative? So that's right. And then once we make that decision, then we know what to start going after in the other part of the decision. So I just throw that out there. And I'm going to make Lisa, who's online, if you have any comments, so I don't miss you because I can't see you raise a hand or anything. Do you have a comment?
Well, yes, I am struggling a little bit, actually a lot of it with the price. And in that it's just so much more than we have available. Looking at that right turn lane going onto westbound, if it helps get that level of service from an F to a C, at least in the morning, at least on that turn, I appreciate that. I understand that it doesn't solve the problem of enlarging the roundabout and really making it be able to serve the vehicles in a way that meets the level of service that we're wanting. My question is, in the event we went with option 2, how much then are we redigging? Because I agree, we really do want to just dig once, and I absolutely support that, and it's just more cost efficient. How I'm understanding this, though, is putting in that right turn lane to then go westbound. That's part of the original plan. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. There would be a right turn lane in either option. However, they don't quite
They
align
don't align.
because of the vertical change.
I think I
Okay.
want to jump in here too. Forgive me, Supervisor Schutte. I just want to provide some additional context regarding potential other funding sources regarding from the federal side of things. As you know, that we oftentimes submit for a variety of federal grants, discretionary grants, competitive. We have to compete. We're not sure we're going to win for them. But there's a couple of grant programs we've had some recent discussions about that I want to just bring up for consideration. Whether they sway you one way or the other, that's totally fine. One is the rural program. So it's a new program under the infrastructure bill. It's part of the mega infra. Rural infra is sort of the standard one. There's this mega, which we're not eligible for. You have to be like 10 million people population or something. And then infra is a freight movement, but a rural is for critical corridors in more rural areas. Our MPO, while we are a metropolitan planning organization, does qualify for being a rural under this grant program. There are some cases to be made, competitive cases. Emergency access is definitely one of them. Proximity to the National Guard is another good case that a rural grant could be relatively competitive in this particular, for this particular project. Another grant opportunity we had a conversation with, and I think Commissioner Novak will like this, with Central Federal Lands yesterday in potentially using federal lands access or similar types of grants through the Central Division of Central Federal Lands, Federal Highway Administration. There is some potential nexus with access to federal lands, state lands surround that whole area. There is some potential opportunity in that location as well. Again, these are competitive. They're not assured, but there are some federal opportunities for additional funding in the
Fill the
next
gap.
few years, yeah, to help fill that gap. It doesn't solve the need to kind of obligate our federal funding now, but, you know, we continue to get federal funding through CAMPO for the next 5 years through fiscal '26, so we know that money could be available and we could redistribute as needed. So I wanted to mention those two items as, you know, potential other funding sources. Mayor, to your point in regards to, you know, other funding that we can find, you know, as we close out projects, sometimes there are projects that have remaining funding. I believe Long Street was closed and there was 100,000 or so money that was left in, I don't know if it was the regional transportation or the VNT, but one of those accounts had a little bit of money left that would eventually roll back into our larger pot to go back into road projects. I don't know where that is in the budget cycle, but there is projects as they close, some money does roll off the book. So I wanted to present that as it's possible that more local money could be out there as projects close, and we can evaluate can we move the money now, or should we wait for the project to close before that money closes? I don't think it would fill the 400 gap, but I think there were some pennies out there. So I wanted to provide that as some context.
Thank you. No, that's really helpful. And so then if we were to go with option one, I guess a positive with that we would be shovel ready, which might make, you know, that always looks favorably toward a grant.
Absolutely. The project will probably be at 60% or so design. Environmental will be completed, which is always a huge hurdle. There's no right-of-way acquisition, another major hurdle for projects. So from a shovel-ready, let's build this thing and spend the money quickly perspective, we're very competitive in that aspect.
Great. Well, okay, thank you.
And I think we also, I don't know, something I tell the public all the time is I'm not building for today. I'm building for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line. So when I look at this, I see that the access will become worse. And I don't think we were getting to level C.
Just in the westbound approach.
Oh, yeah, I was going to
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
yeah, we're not.
So
Okay,
the
just wanted to
overall
make
is
sure.
still E,
We're
but
still below our goal.
threshold,
for
yes.
Thresholds. I don't know. I feel that we're gonna be, more and more development is going on Solomon and the Lampa project there. And so I think you're gonna see nothing but Fifth Street, more pressure will become on the roundabout as all of that develops out. So I look at that for emergency. You know, you're putting a fire station on Budeye. I look at that as emergency access through that roundabout. I don't want to do construction twice because that's obviously going to make everybody use Deer Run Road. I don't really want to do it to them twice if I can help it. They really want better service, but they still aren't going to like the construction period. We all have faced that through the whole community. So I'm leaning towards we should complete the projects that we put on the books, but I'm willing to be convinced different. Mr. Dotson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I've looked at this thing pretty hard, and I know we all have. I really don't like option two. I just don't think, you know, for what you're putting in there, you get much bang for the buck. And it seems like if you put that in now, it would present some complications even if you tried to come back in and expand the original design. That's correct. I guess what I'm unclear on is, you know, with the funding unidentified, the entire thing unidentified at this point, what is a reasonable outlook for, you know, acquiring that funding and moving forward? I know any of us don't have a crystal ball, but is it likely that we could secure that within a year or so, or do we know?
I'm
Two of them exist.
So if you're talking specifically from a federal perspective and a discretionary grant, then it's difficult to predict when they would award the funding. So there have been a variety of notice of funding opportunities published. They come out every couple of months for different grants. I think Protect and Safe Streets for All are out now, and Rural Mega Infra are due out any day now. And so those can be long durations in terms of applications. We could wait a while before we hear anything, and then the agreement process can take multiple years, as I think we're experiencing on William Street with the RAISE grant, the time it takes to execute that. So I'll be honest, in terms of obligating a federal grant, we're probably looking at 3 to 5 years from construction. That would be my best guess right now, if we were to chase that option. It wouldn't be a very big grant, so I think we would be competitive in that sense, for the reasons I mentioned earlier. I mean, $3 or $4 million would get us there. In terms of the local funding, I mean, that funding is available, right? It'll be available July 1st once the budgets are approved. So we know that money is available to move forward with that right now. The other thing I want to mention is while it looks like we're pulling from District 1, we would look to backfill from other districts. And so when we get back to District 3, the way we'd kind of play kind of a shuffleboard game, where we'd take the money from District 2 to do District 1, take District 1 to 3, and then when we get to 3, right, that's the one that's going to be short, because we would have given its money to this particular project. So it's District 3 that would sort of have the less pavement preservation compared to the other districts. So we wouldn't like gyp or negate pavement preservation of district. We just make sure we moved funding around a little bit to make sure that happened.
Well, keep it in its consistent ratios is
Yeah,
what you're
we
saying.
want to keep the proportions consistent, but we want to make sure that every district is made whole, because this one's in District 3. We don't want to, like I said, rob from another district. So we would do that. So I want to make sure that's clear as well. You know, we've talked about some other opportunities, and I'm willing to entertain some other potential options here. I mean, option 2, I think, if it doesn't sound like the right turn lanes preferred, and that's fine. You know, if option 2 could be modified, that we do nothing at the roundabout at all and just do the rest of the project. So that's an easy modification if that's where we wanted to go on that one. It's not a do the right turn lane or do nothing. There is some flexibility there. So.
Yeah, because in that project is also, we got 9 intersections or something with ADA
Yes.
updates too. I mean, there's more than the roundabout there.
The Fifth Street improvements is approximately about $1 million of this budget. So those would remain as improvements regardless of the decision moving forward with the roundabout.
And is any of that, you know, it's also in a school area. I don't know. I think there's opportunities to get the project done, unless I'm missing. And I cleared it because I knew I was going to call on you, but okay. Ms. Maloney?
Yes. So if the right-of-way wasn't a constraint in this design, we'd be able to shift the center of the roundabout in a more ideal location that would help balance the earthwork. It would give us a little bit more of a flatter spot, and also reduce the amount of impacts onto the multi-use path in adjacent areas. I don't have a number of how much that would reduce, but I believe that would be a significant reduction, as it would be more ideal topography for earthwork.
And have those conversations happened? Not yet?
We haven't had any formal conversations with state lands regarding significant acquisition of their parcel. We have not done that.
Does staff have any reason to believe that those conversations would be beneficial to the project? Have we received any indication that it would be a possibility?
My understanding is that there was some hesitancy from the state, and this is going back several months now. There was some hesitancy from the state to relinquish significant portions of that parcel. I know there have been some changes at state lands So maybe that direction has changed. We have not investigated in the recent months as to that potential.
Okay. I guess, and the reason I was going wasn't to throw like a grenade into all this, but I would agree with the other commissioners that a phased approach, there's too many negatives for me personally. I also have concerns with even option one. I think the public doesn't understand when we spend a lot of money on roads and then pieces of the project still don't work well. And so still that southbound being an E, as we all know what it is, it's the best we can do. I think there will be, the public doesn't understand why we're dumping all this money if it's not going to operate, great at opening day. And so I asked about that piece of property because if it would open up additional options to improve the operation for that southbound approach, and maybe we would save on earthwork or other benefits, it might be beneficial for me to hold on the project, to really do it right, and go after other money, if there is indeed other money.
I think that's definitely a possibility. I mean, I'm always open, we can definitely open to coordinating with state lands regarding the use of that parcel. I mean, for all I know, they may just be like, we've decided we don't want this anymore. I don't know that. There would be a right-of-way acquisition process, so that would be much deeper involved than they are now, and we'd have to go through those formal processes. All doable, just additional time. We're looking probably an 18-month, 24-month is the standard answer they'll give us. And so that's one of the reasons we didn't pursue right-of-way acquisition initially is due to some of the time constraints associated with the project. But to Brian's point, I think it would absolutely result in a construction savings. Getting access to that parcel would make it much more constructible. We could build a temporary road around that area and get access to the neighborhood while the roundabout is constructed in its entirety. So there's a lot of benefits to having a little bit more access to that parcel.
Can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. On the right turn lane of option 2, I understand why staff included that as an option. Have you found, just like wacky ideas, like is there any other innovation or anything that would be maybe more cost effective that could be tested or considered to kind of relieve those neighborhood folks that are trying to get out in the morning? If the answer is no, that's okay too.
Well, I think, thinking back a number of years when we've been talking about this particular roundabout, I remember conversations with Dan Stuckey, Deputy Public Works Director, and I believe you as well, who showed that there was some consideration of potentially developing some sort of a metered approach to one or all of the legs at the roundabout. We have investigated that. It fits and starts over the last several couple of years. And it's been successful in a number of roundabouts across the country where you would put in a meter at a leg of a roundabout slightly in advance of the roundabout to meter the flow as it entered. And that would, in this case, it would allow, you would put the meter on the westbound leg as you approach from Eagle Valley Middle School to the roundabout. Doing that would allow vehicles to enter from the southbound direction a lot more efficiently. They wouldn't be blocked by a constant stream of cars coming out of Eagle Valley. There'd be a gap created artificially that would allow the vehicles to enter the roundabout and circulate. So I think there's potential that it could mitigate a lot of the southbound movements. What that does to the westbound, I honestly don't know. I don't know that there's a modeling software out there that would accurately model, to at least our satisfaction, staff satisfaction, a real representation. Some of these states, before they put in these metered roundabout legs, have done an investigation on a temporary demo basis. If anyone's driven, I think it was last summer on State Route 88 or points to the south, Highway 4 even in California, they had one-way traffic control signals where they would roll out a temporary traffic signal, mount it there, and that would be your control. We could do that as a trial basis in theory here. I'd have to think about how that would work, but you could put a temporary traffic signal on the westbound leg, a couple of 100 feet in advance of the roundabout, and put the striping, signing, run it for a couple of weeks and see if that made any difference. Obviously, the cost of even if that did work, the cost of a permanent traffic signal is far less than even the cost of the right turn lane. And that could get us 3 to 5 years of additional capacity and use out of the roundabout while we search for and research additional grant opportunities to build the thing permanently.
You guys are so
And-
smart. That's cool. I mean, I'm like, that's a very interesting concept. Like,
WashDOT does it, Oregon has done it, Indiana has done it, so it's been done before, and there's some guidance in federal highways manuals on how to do metered roundabouts.
and I understand, I mean, I don't know if you prepared this like as a backup, but I mean, if with that scenario, like I see Mayor Bagwell nodding when you said it kind of holds the westbound, and then, you know, immediately you're like, what are the impacts to that neighborhood? Are they waiting more? In those scenarios that you talked about, could they hold the northbound? Like, so you're almost alternating, right? So maybe the westbound pauses, so the southbound goes through, and then the northbound pauses, so the westbound gets out. So it creates more of a free flow.
I
period.
definitely think that, you know, we don't have to do one leg, we could do 2 legs, we could try another leg. I mean, that's the idea of maybe a movable object, is we could test it, right? I mean, and then we could get the public's perception and understand it. I think another thing that I will mention that's important to mention is it's very new, that concept is very unusual. It doesn't happen very often. I mean, ramp meters, yes, there are some in Reno, but there aren't any here in Carson City on our freeway interchanges. And ramp metering on a roundabout in general is relatively a new concept, and there could be some initial driver confusion. So there may be some outreach needed to do that. And so I just want to make sure we're cognizant of other potential side effects of some of those things.
And I would just like to add, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, that this metered option would only operate in the AM.
During that peak
That
time.
peak, that peak's not going to be running
Right.
all
Just
day.
that hour.
Yes, it's
or hour and
just
a
to help
half.
mitigate the
Right.
AM peak.
Mhm,
That's correct.
mhm.
So for me then, considering the possibility of other programs, I mean, the city has had tremendous success with the flat programs. The risk of those, which I'm sure it's been talked about here before, is the feds manage those projects. So it's a different construction feel than a city-run project, city staff-run project. But we've had success, and Chris did a tremendous job overseeing the Kings Canyon one. So that sounds really interesting. The rural one sounds really interesting. It sounds like we all agree that the piecemeal concept isn't great. So I'm not sure where we go, but that's kind of where I am.
And I want to note that there have been some changes to how the feds are looking at federal projects. They're looking at more of a prioritization, particularly Central Federal Lands, more of a prioritization matrix where it's less, you submit this grant, we compare it to every other grant submission. They want to look at, we look at this project, we look at all similar types of projects, and we go, okay, this meets these needs, these needs, and then they prioritize it. So it's they're looking at tweaking their processes, and that trickles down all the way to project administration. So while that may have been the past, they may
small
be
enough to give it to
tweaking
us.
some of their
Right.
programs, allowing different agencies to run different programs.
And especially because we have so much more of the money of this project, they may very well, if they're only doing 5 to 800, that or $1 million, let's just say, they might go, forget it. The city can administer it. I don't know. They'll probably give us an extra condition to go with it, though.
Oh, probably.
There's nothing easy on no gimmies I have figured out here, no gimmies. Craig?
Yeah, I think, going back a little bit, it's still, we're trying to address a peak hour problem on school days, right? And trying to be as smart as we can about it. Help teach the kids something about, okay, we can throw money at it or we can be smarter. And I think what Lucia's come up with sounds really good. And I also agree, there's vacant land out there. And if there's a way to, get some of it or swap or whatever with state or other folks, we should pursue that as well. Because it sounded like the original design, we were constrained and we're paying a lot more for earthwork, which we may not need if we had some other access points. So I'd rather spend a little bit more time on design and thinking and, going after other grants as well. I'm not sure in the overall scope if this would be the best project that Carson City wants to apply for, if there's other projects you're looking for. But I think
Well-
at this point, it still makes sense to go after as many grants as you can.
On that note, I appreciate those comments, Commissioner Novak. I think when we looked at the rural program last year in pretty good detail, and given the criteria of that grant, I don't know that Carson City has a great project, at least at that time, had a great project. This one wasn't necessarily considered for that because with the time we were like, we're good, we're funded, we're going forward. I know Lyon County has some good projects for that rural program, but this one, we'll take a look at it again and see if the criteria's change when that NOFO comes out, should we go that direction. But I think this is one of those projects in Carson City that rural would be successful, potentially successful for, whereas a lot of our other projects, because of their multimodal component, because they're not capacity focused, because they have more of an economic side effect downtown kind of a thing. It's just it's just a different location in Carson City. So it kind of it checks a few different boxes than some of our other projects do.
Well, I think in general, we're all indicating do it right or don't do it at all. So I think we've kind of gotten to that methodology. And then how we either do alternative one, whether we add some testing of some of the legs to it, or we're asking state lands to double check if there's a potential for any right-of-ways or parcel swaps or whatever land deals we can make. I know they had up for disposal southeast. Is there 2 parcels there?
I haven't seen those
They have
two
it on
parcels,
their,
but it
they
could
have
be.
it on their list
Okay.
for disposal, because I know one of the places that was looking at what they wanted to put there. So I think you can look around to see, because I know they had something up on Arrowhead, and I believe 2 parcels right in that area that they put for disposal. So it's certainly worthy of,
I do want to note
knows?
one last thing, and I apologize for interrupting, Mayor, that we can have a conversation with NDOT. It's a sort of a self-imposed funding deadline. NDOT likes to be able to obligate their funding before the end of the fiscal year. It is possible that they may be willing to stretch that limit a little bit, allowing us to keep the federal funding we have in the project for another year. I don't know if that's possible, but we can definitely broach that conversation with them. That would keep the 2.3 million we already have in the project, for another year. And then, while we pursue additional federal opportunities, so that we don't have to fund the project from scratch again, is what I'm getting at. I don't want to promise that, but
That only makes
I can
sense.
absolutely have that conversation, and they've done it before, so it's not unprecedented.
Chris, you hadn't gotten any status, I think Brian mentioned, on the noise study that I still think is.
Well, the noise study's going. We got delayed because it snowed forever, and you can't do noise studies in the snow because snow muffles noise. So now that it's melted, they've collected their data, they're processing it, and we should see something relatively soon.
That actually just came in yesterday.
go. Came in
So
yesterday.
we got the noise study completed and no impacts.
It's quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we knew that. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Based off the draft report.
Let me see if there's any public comment on this item, just to double check her to make sure nobody's got a great idea that we're not tossing around here. Okay, can bring it back up here then for any final thoughts or whatever. Miss Maloney?
Just really quick on the Fifth Street component of the project. Does it make sense to do that? One of my biggest concerns is subjecting that neighborhood to traffic control at the roundabout twice. I'm not super clear on the traffic control on the Fifth Street portion. Does it make sense where you are with design to move forward with that? Or is our concern with the roundabout piece, or are we all saying hold off on everything? Because there are some
The
operational.
ADA parts?
Well, there are some operational parts too, where is it Carson River Road meets Fifth Street? Wasn't there something there too?
We already completed the right turn lane
Oh, okay.
onto Carson
So
River
that's
Road.
So it's
that's
only ADA left?
ADA with some pavement rehabilitation and preservation. The water line improvements were closer to the roundabout. So I don't think the traffic control impacts on Fifth Street improvements would be significant, such as the roundabout.
So what does staff recommend in
Yeah,
that
Yeah, I
sense?
mean, you brought up an interesting challenge that I hadn't considered, and we'd have to coordinate with NDOT on how that mechanism would work, if we could split the federal funding so that we could federally fund the other part this year and keep the remaining federal funds for the roundabout next year. I need to have more conversations with them on that. The initial thought was, option one, we build it all, including the roundabout, and option two, regardless of the right turn, is we only build that portion of Fifth Street, and we move the federal funds off of somewhere else, or which could be a future Fifth Street in theory. That would be just an agreement process, an administrative process to move the money in agreements. The water line replacement is additional background. There was a water line leak about a year and a half ago right in front of Eagle Valley Middle School. This is the portion of the water line that was slated to be replaced. Was there a portion right in front of Eagle Valley Middle School, and that was the portion of road that would be repaved. The rest of the road would be a preservation of slurry, essentially, and some patching here and there where the pavements failed. And that could really happen at any time, this year or a future year.
So it sounds like we have a couple of holes, though, before we can make a final decision, other than we're already telling you we don't want to pursue option two. So I guess maybe we're giving you more of a decision. We're giving you enough of a decision, let me say it that way, is to then go back to pursue maybe a few variations on alternative one. It might take us 1.5 years or 2 years. We might have to borrow money from this one, or state lands may give us property. But I think maybe what we're telling you is we don't like the lesser alternatives of not fixing the issue. That just doesn't, I don't even want to put 2 million
Okay.
to that, I guess is the right way. Am I correct? We given you guys enough then
No,
to?
that's very helpful. I appreciate that. I mean, so we won't do option two, nor will we do exactly option one right now. So in other words, we're not going for it. We're not moving the funding from all these other projects. We're not going to get this built right immediately. We're going to pursue a bunch of different options. I just want to make sure I'm clear on it. We're going to pursue some other options, including federal, including coordination with NDOT, to ultimately build option one, just not this summer, or finalize it this summer.
Correct, I think,
Okay.
right? Everybody on the same page?
Unless it
That
makes
sounds
sense.
great.
Unless it makes sense and staff come back and say it makes sense to do Fifth Street standalone this summer.
Okay.
Right, when you get done, you go talk to state lands and they say, nope,
No way.
not
Okay.
getting an
Got
ounce
it. Understood.
of land that we'll give you, and
If we
you can forget
miraculously-
it, see you in 20 years. Yeah.
And if we miraculously find a bunch of money in one of our buckets, then we'll mention that as well.
And again, don't forget to, well, maybe we get there before any other city department gets there. I know tennis courts are moving because we did that during the budget hearing, so just, you might not have long to get to the 400,000, but anyway. Okay, so then we're good enough on that item to give it direction enough. Okay, so we're gonna move to agenda item 5C, discussion and possible action regarding Amendment 1 to Cooperative Agreement PR 279-19063 with NDOT for Edmonds Multi-Use Project, increasing the total agreement by 1 million, from 1 million, not by 618 to 2,153,256, resulting in the 5% local match obligation increasing by 26,763. Brian, anything else on that one?
Yeah, I'm just happy to answer any questions. This is just the amendment for additional
Right.
funding.
Does anybody have any questions, suggestions? Mr. Dotson?
Well, I know that the items 5C and 5D are tied together, correct?
Correct.
And that it seems like, if possible, have some comment from you on item 5D. in terms of the construction account, award amount as compared to the engineer's estimate?
Yeah, so the engineer's estimate was this project's been going on for a long time. So the engineer's estimate was quite dated from the unit prices from before kind of the inflation and COVID and whatnot. So we feel like the contract award is relevant of today's prices for this project.
Mr. Dotson, do you feel you need item 5D opened to be able to consider 5C? Because otherwise I need to do a technical issue.
Well, with that comment, I wondered if that was the case, because I know this thing has drug out for a long time. So I'm satisfied.
Okay, I just
But,
want to make sure, because otherwise I will open both items at the same time.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no more on, otherwise we'll wait then to 5D discussion. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think when we look at all of these, and I think everything we've been talking about, as you can see, we started this on June 2019 on this item, so I don't know, every year we're waiting, it gets worse and worse and worse, but does anybody have anything else on 5C? Everybody good? Ms. Shooty, good?
I'm good and I'm happy to make a motion.
Okay, let me just do a real quick public comment. Anybody? Okay, a motion, Ms. Shooty.
I move to approve the amendment as presented.
I will second.
And I have a second by Mr. Novak. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. We're now on to agenda item 5D, discussion and possible action regarding the MKD Construction, Inc. as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder for the Edmund Sports Complex Multi-Use Path Project to award contract number 233000289 for the project to MKD for a total not to exceed amount of $1,897,254. Brian, anything else you want to share on this one?
Nope, just here to answer questions.
I have one item, Madam Chair, if I may. I just want to acknowledge MKD for working with us while we work through the agreement process so that we could award their contract. They were chomping at the bit to get started, and they've been very patient. So I wanted to acknowledge MKD, if they're out there listening, for working with Carson City on this.
And I think we have a few past members that would be jumping for joy and clapping their hands that this one's getting done. So, right? I think I've been serving long enough now. It's like, yay, we're getting this one done. Kind of goes with our whole discussion on everything with roadways, though. They're just not easy
Yes.
to coordinate and get done, and they seem to take forever, so. Is there any public comment on this item? Nope. Okay, I'll take a motion. Would like to make this one. Mr. Dotson,
I move to award the contract as presented and authorize the Public Works Director to approve expenditure of a 10% contingency if necessary.
is there a second?
I will second.
Second by Mr. Novak. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. We're now on to agenda item 5E, discussion and possible action regarding the submission of a federal fiscal year 2023 Safe Streets and Roads for All, that's a new one, grant application to the United States Department of Transportation to update the Carson City Safe Routes to School Master Plan for $125,000, with $100,000 coming from the grant program and the remaining $25,000 from our local match. Ms. Shooty, do I have a disclosure, please?
Yes. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My nephew is Chris Martinovich, who is employed by Carson City and will be presenting this item. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item, It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his service with the city, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other resident in Carson City. NRS 281A.420 only requires abstention in clear cases, and the independent judgment of a reasonable person in my position would not be impacted by my familial relationship. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting on this matter.
Thank you. Mr. Martinovich?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this item is to seek approval to submit a grant to the Safe Streets and Roads for All program with the United States Department of Transportation. If you recall, last summer, we submitted a grant, an infrastructure grant for the Empire Elementary Safety Improvement Project using our Safe Routes to School Master Plan as an eligible safety action plan. So to be eligible to apply for the implementation grant, an agency has to have an approved, eligible, safe action plan that meets certain federal requirements. So this grant application is really in line to update our Safe Routes to School Master Plan to make it compliant with a safety action plan. We had a debrief with the US DOT following our grant submission last year, and they provided some guidance on ways we can improve going forward and make more competitive. This is a planning grant application, not an infrastructure grant application. I do want to note that last year, all of the infrastructure funding, well, let me back up and say that there's $1 billion eligible each federal fiscal year for the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. 60% of that goes to infrastructure and 40% goes to planning. That is by statute of the federal law. Last year, the US DOT awarded all of their implementation funding for all of the projects, but they did not have enough planning projects to award all of their planning funding that's obligated under their law. So they've rolled forward that additional $177 million into this additional fiscal year. So there's $1.17 billion available for projects under this program. And we're seeking a planning implementation grant from that to update our master plan. The project itself will be to, one, update our plan in accordance with the Safe Action Plan requirements. We also want to incorporate additional schools that were not eligible at the time the plan was implemented, such as Carson High School and some of the other schools in and around Carson City, particularly down in the Stewart colony of the Washoe tribe, as well as the Carson colony and other locations. So that's the general purpose of the grant agreement, and looking for any feedback this board has on if we should include any particular schools or school areas, but we would plan to submit that grant before the July 10th deadline.
Any questions? Ms. Maloney?
Sorry, every month I come in here, I'm like, I'm not gonna talk, and then I'm like, okay, I got all these comments. By completing that, so which additional funding would these updates potentially open up once we are compliant? Could you help us understand that a little bit better?
Sure. This would ensure that we're compliant for the infrastructure portion of this grant, which this program is under the infrastructure bill through fiscal year 26, $1 billion a year. So we would ensure we're eligible for that funding. This also opens us up for additional HSIP, or Highway Safety Improvement Plan funds. That is a funding source we're not able to really tap into today as Carson City. Updating and having an action plan that's compliant with those requirements would allow us to pursue additional federal funds through the safety program. And those come through NDOT, like our similar local public agency agreements. So those are just two examples that by doing an update to this plan keeps us and makes us eligible for those federal funding sources. It also makes us more competitive for any other funding source when safety is involved. I just confused you, I see that. By having a safety action plan approved and adopted by the agency or the MPO, where it's just another checkbox in being competitive on the federal level for grants.
Because, let me just see if I can understand something in my mind here, because so our current plan is not compliant, not because of the missing schools, but because of missing elements?
There were some concerns raised by the US DOT regarding some particular elements and some wording in the plan that could be better aligned with the Safe Action Plan requirements. So we would be looking to address those items. And this is a public outreach, there's a public outreach component. There's some data analysis components that need to be included and processed in the plan.
So
And we can't do those in-house. I guess that's the,
We certainly could do those in-house. I think we would have to find the funding to do that. This was that federal funding source.
or you mean time? Because in-house means you have it. It's you, but you then can't work on another
But
project.
we
or
would
somebody
likely,
can't do other
yeah, we
work.
would likely hire a consultant to do this update to the plan.
So, Chris, basically, you applied last year, you didn't win, but the debrief gave you enough comments that this seems like the next step to take.
That's
How
correct.
does this fit in with the local road safety plan that we're supposed to be starting through NDOT?
Sure, we think this absolutely complements the local road safety plan. Our understanding, and we haven't really started the local road safety plan, it's been coordinated with NDOT, they're managing their consultant and doing the work. We haven't had a kickoff to date. But this complements the local road safety plan in a lot of ways, in that the local road safety plan is going to look at the broad network of traffic safety in the CAMPO region. It's not going to hone down on particular elements around walking and biking to school or around school traffic locations. It's going to look at the traffic network as a whole. So the Safe Routes to School Master Plan and making that a safety action plan is really going to allow us to zoom in on those areas where there are vulnerable users, and there are those who are definitely walking and biking. And so they complement each other, in that one's a little more macro and one's a little more micro on particular areas of the city. And we would make sure we're not contradicting. I mean, I think there's absolute alignment with the two, and I think there's a lot of benefit with by
I just,
doing it.
craft your scope of work so we don't pay the same consultant
Absolutely.
twice.
No, absolutely, totally.
Getting to here is it's like one plan and another plan and then another plan, and here we have another plan. And you're right, I think that's what we're all concerned about or whatever. And I think about our last discussion even on the roundabout, because to me, that's also school safety, both at an elementary school, and I also believe for the high school, because of the route it's on, it certainly falls within that also. And don't want that forgotten if we're going to be adding the high school into this discussion. And then does putting in, do we have a tribal school?
There is a school down in the Washoe Colony, yep, on Clear Creek and Center.
I was trying a little, yeah, I know where it's at now. I was like, where is that school? Okay. And so it's always good to put that in too, because then if you've got your tribes included, that's more bonus points. Okay. Any other, is there any public comment on this item? No? Okay. I'll bring it back up to the board for final thought.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Novak?
Okay, I move to approve the submission of the grant application as presented.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Ms. Schutte is the second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed, say no. Let the record reflect the motion was unanimous. Thank you. We're now on to agenda, our non-action items. Mr. Martinovich, the Transportation Manager report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to start by letting this board know we have a new construction manager at Carson City. His name is Mark Tiemann. He comes to us from Granite Construction. He started on Monday, so I think he's just getting his feet wet and getting up to speed on all we do here in Carson City and all the projects we have going. So I wish him well. Met him a couple times. He seems like a good guy. On May 20th, Public Works Week concludes with a public open house at the Public Works Corporate Yard at 3505 Butteye Way from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. So I encourage all the public to come out. We'll have raffle prizes and games and equipment climbing and all kinds of stuff, giveaways and stuff like that. So exciting, and feel free to come out and check that out.
For duck races.
I have no idea if there's duck races. If there is duck races, okay.
They're fun. If you guys haven't ever been, it really is a good time to bring your family and learn. Anyway, just thought I would
Good.
Prime the pump there for you, right? Put some water in there, make it go, go, go. Okay.
Next week is also Bike to School or Work Week. So I wanted to give a shout out to those. If you're interested in walking and biking to school, next week is nationally recognized week. I believe the Board of Supervisors had a proclamation. So find a day. It's hopefully the weather holds out and it'll be a gorgeous day to walk or bike to school or work. We're working on finalizing, I think I've mentioned before, an electric vehicle charging policy here for Carson City. We've completed a business impact statement, and so that policy will be brought to the Board of Supervisors in the near future for final adoption on the EV charging policy. I can't read my own notes, so I'm going to skip that one. Wanted to note that next month we will be bringing our District 1 projects for board's input and potential approval. That includes Carmine Street and as well as other projects we've been reviewing and prioritizing. We'll also bring a preliminary list for District 2 so that we can have the discussion going on that and kind of prime the pump, as you just mentioned, on potential projects. We're not going to select those yet, but you'll kind of get a sense of where we are and where we're leaning toward for those. We also have a number of contracts next month related to material testing and work up on North Carson, as well as our annual long line, short line program. So look for those in June. And I can't remember what my notes are, so I'm going to call that good.
That works. Okay. How about the street operations report?
Street operations report, I'm going to call your attention to a couple of items. Down grading and shoulder maintenance, about third of the way or 2/3 of the way down the page. Shoulder work on asphalt roads, 3,225. A lot of that work has been as a result of cleanup from the recent storms over the winter. They've been doing a lot of grading of the shoulders and the ditches, which is also reflected down in the linear foot of ditches cleared. Work happened along Fairview, and I think it's still happening along Edmonds. They'll soon be moving up into the Kings Canyon area and working on some of those areas. So a lot of feet of ditches and shoulders prepared, and so wanted to note those as well as, of course, potholes always continue to be filled across the city. 614 potholes in the month of March. So that's what I have on that.
Okay. And then our capital projects status reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start off with the Edmonds Sports Complex. As we witnessed earlier, that project is moving forward with construction. We have our Roop Street rehabilitation project. This project will be combined with the future design phase of Roop Street between Mustard Street and Washington. So this project will be removed from the status report and reported again once design resumes. Our Robinson area
Can you
sewer.
give me, sorry, on that one? So we'll get a new project number and everything? Because this one will come off, even though it's had expenditures on it? When
don't-
you say take it off the.
I don't
just-
think we'll change the project number. I think it's just a matter of, we can absolutely keep it on. There just won't be any activity for the next several months to report on it. So the numbers that you see here will remain the same for at least 6 to 8 months. And so we thought, well, we'll take it off until there's actual new expenditures occurring on the project, in which case we would we would show it again. So that was the theory there, but we can easily leave it.
I think it's a good discussion. Well, anyway, I think it should be left as an open project, because if we've got a project number, we've got money attached to a project, I don't like to see them go away, because I think it's important too that the public sees, whether we like it or not, some of them are gonna sit for a year with no activity on them. But that's the reality, because of the design time, the whatever, but
Fair enough.
I
Okay.
think because we have money actually obligated on it and spent
It's
115,000.
easier to
Okay.
keep than delete.
Yes, perfect. It actually is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Next is our Robinson area sewer replacement project. This project has been completed, and the city is working on the closeout documentation.
Good job.
Our Colorado Street pavement project. So the water main along Colorado Street is complete, and the contractor is continuing to work on the water meter tie-in connections, so that utility work is expected to be ongoing through June. I think we've had enough discussion on District 3 5th Street reconstruction project.
Let's start over. Shut that mic off at the end of the row down there. Good.
Our East William Complete Street project, so this project, the project team is developing 90% design plans. The NEPA documents and technical studies have been submitted to both NDOT and FHWA for review. Additionally, the team is in process of creating legal descriptions for the necessary easements required to complete the project. Our DMV multi-use path project, so that project has developed 60% design plans and submitted these plans to NDOT for review. The final design for the project is expected to be completed in the fall of this year, with construction set to take place the beginning of next year. Appian Way Traffic Signal Intersection Improvement Project. So the consultant is working on 100% design plans. Staff is working to develop, working with Department of Housing and Urban Development on completing the environmental requirements. Additional support from our consultant may be needed. The completion of the design is anticipated this summer. Next is our Desatoya ADA Improvement CBG project. This project was awarded in April and the contractor is expected to begin construction in May. Our District 5 Medical Parkway Preservation Project. This project was awarded in April as well and the contractor is expected to begin in May.
I'll note on that one, we had a kickoff meeting for construction. They said July, so that was their request.
Start construction?
That was yesterday.
Thank you.
We didn't even have the weather yet. Oh, sorry.
Our District 5 Mountain Street Preservation Project, this is awarded last month and construction has begun on storm drainage improvements and ADA upgrades. The slurry is scheduled for June 2023. Our District 5 Winnie Lane Reconstruction Project, the consultant is working on the 50% design plans and is expected to continue until the fall of this year, with construction anticipated to begin next year. And last is our West Carson Vulnerable User Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project. Staff is coordinating with the survey data with the consultant, and we're beginning to start design on that. Happy to answer any questions.
Anybody else have a question on any of the projects? Okay. Any members of the board have anything else to share? Okay, then we'll move to final public comment. Oh, you did? Go ahead. We'll go back on to agenda item 6. Member Maloney?
Can I request future agenda items? Is now the time for that? I just wanted to request maybe an agenda item with more information about that test of the signal thing that we talked about earlier. I'd just be curious on more about like how it works and how much it costs so that this commission could even consider something like that, whether at the roundabout or somewhere else. I think that'd be super interesting. And then a second item, I think the culture at Public Works is really unique in that we close out these construction projects and I feel like generally they're under budget or within budget. And so I don't know if it's a future agenda item or some sort of report, and I would defer to staff on when or how that was communicated. But when projects are closed out or when they drop off the 7C or the project report, if we could get a report out on the final budget compared to the budget and maybe the final schedule compared to the schedule. I think the culture really spearheaded by Deputy Director Stuckey when he was the city engineer and now and Director Schultz. You guys do such a great job, and it would be great to get that accounting. I know we talked about it a little bit in multiple items, so thanks.
Anybody else? Ms. Schutte, anything?
No, thank you for letting me join via WebEx. Went on an amazing housing tour this afternoon, which is why I was running late. But it is really interesting when talking about the needs of, housing needs, how roads are always such an important part of the conversation and connectivity and access, transportation. So I'm bringing home some great ideas. Tomorrow will be a big brainstorming session, so I'm eager to share. But again, thanks for putting up with this inconvenience of the WebEx participation.
That's okay. Thank you for participating. Okay, then we are on final public comment. Yeah, no, there's not everybody running to us. Okay, with that, then we are in adjournment, and thank you all for a great meeting. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Stuckey. I guess I should have done that publicly for all your work. Thank you, though. It's important. We need to celebrate our employees whenever we can. So good luck and congratulations. It's our loss.
Truly, yeah.